Week 1 of Wimbledon was off the chain. A record number of top seeds crashed out on both tours, and mental breakdowns were at an all-time high.
I feel very alone out there at times. I struggle.
But some things never change. The traditions at Wimbledon.
Ladies and gentlemen, play suspended.
Oh my goodness. This is unbelievable.
Novak showing up when it matters most.
I wouldn't be here if I didn't think I have a chance, to be honest.
Sinner absolutely destroying everyone, and Alcaraz forgetting how to lose on grass. In a week where the underdogs reigned and predictions tanked, the All England club certainly gave us a lot to remember. Here's a breakdown of all the action, my tactical analysis, some hot takes on Wimbledon's traditions, and the critical moments that made last week at Wimbledon unforgettable. Seven-time Wimbledon champ Djokovic continued his quest for title number 25 in the opener against Alexandre Müller. Novak looked great from the get-go, especially with his movement and on the serve. After blitzing his way to take the first set 6-1, it looked to be a routine affair until Djokovic started struggling midway through the second set, eventually squandering 6 set points to lose the set in a tiebreak. With things level, Novak called for a doctor twice in the third set. We saw him clutch his chest and struggle with breathing, but after popping some pills, the Serbian recovered to take the match in 4. Overall, an impressive effort on his part. The deep returns down the middle didn't give Müller any angles to work with. Novak's aggressive return earned him 27 breakpoint opportunities, one of the highest in his career. He was 23 for 29 at the net, hit 22 aces and 50 winners in a solid performance, but wait until you see what the GOAT did in the next round. Djokovic hit another gear and only dropped 12 games in the next 2 rounds. It was ruthless and efficient tennis against the home favorite Dan Evans in the second. He neutralized Evans' trademark slice by simply hitting through it from low contact points, either with devastating backhands down the line or via a flurry of forehands inside in.
Again.
Look at how Novak ripped balls that sat at his knee level, the racket head acceleration, and the footwork to get into position. After a competitive first set, Djokovic hit his flow state midway through the second, not dropping any points on his first serve and barely making any errors for the remainder of the set before finishing Evans off with a bagel in the third. 46 winners and only 14 unforced errors, and just like in the first round, Djokovic didn't even get broken. The 6th seed then got his 100th win at Wimbledon against his compatriot Miomir Kecmanovic in yet another entertaining show. Djokovic was in full control from the baseline once again, and also had no problems shortening points with clinical serve and volleying. It was first strike tennis in full flight.
Well, that is 23 minutes of a masterclass.
A bagel in the second set saw him surpass Andre Agassi's record of 50 for the most bagels by a male at any Grand Slam ever. Djokovic, however, got broken for the first time in the tournament while serving for the match, but he took care of business at the second time of asking, taking down Kecmanovic in 1 hour and 47 minutes. Djokovic hit a staggering 60 winners as he became only the second man to record 100 victories at 2 different slams after Roger Federer. It's crazy to think that Djokovic has a shot at holding the record for most wins at all 4 majors, including the French Open. He'll need to play till 40 to make that happen, and it looks like he's up for the challenge.
My wish is to play for several more years.
But would his successors let him? Alcaraz didn't exactly have an easy first week at the All England club, and I could understand why. After a Roland Garros final that would have taken anyone weeks to recover from, Alcaraz arrived at Queens the following week, and he didn't just show up. He went all the way to the title, and with only a week to recover, he showed up again at Wimbledon to defend his title with considerable mileage in his legs. For this reason, it's easy to see why he might have had some hiccups against Fabio Fognini in the first round. Alcaraz clearly struggled with his serve and hit only 53% of first serves in the first 2 sets, but he still managed to keep his nose in front. Up a set and a break, Alcaraz's concentration levels then dropped and he surrendered the break before following that up with a bad miss that gave Fognini the second set. Wild swings in momentum followed in the third, with Alcaraz digging himself out of a hole, going up a break, and then failing to close out the set at 5-3. Though he would end up breaking Fognini at the death to go up 2-1. But let's talk about Fognini's doggedness for a minute. Playing under extreme heat, and by the way, at 32 degrees Celsius, it was the hottest Wimbledon opening day on record, the Italian absolutely showed up. The extreme heat in London might feel a little bit different compared to places like Miami or Arizona due to the extreme humidity, and frankly, even fans in the stands, in addition to the players on court, struggled with the heat a lot. Despite all this, Fognini refused to go away. He kept up the intensity and then even forced a decider. Fognini ramped up the aggression on the return of serve and tried to take time away from a frustrated Alcaraz. Carlitos, though, to his credit, ultimately tied up the loose ends in his game and shook off Fognini in the fifth after 4 hours and 37 minutes. I know it's gotta be said, but props to Alcaraz for his incredible powers of recovery and his nerve management. For Fognini, it was an emotional end to the Italian's last Wimbledon. A much more relaxed Alcaraz had no problems brushing off British qualifier Oliver Tarvett in the second round, and while we can all agree that Alcaraz wasn't really tested, Tarvett played way above his top 700 level for the most part. There were a number of explosive points, and for someone who hadn't played a Grand Slam match before the tournament, playing in front of such a huge crowd at home would have certainly meant a lot to him. I think the touch, speed, movement, and court coverage are super impressive, but more work is needed on his serve and game off the ground. Alcaraz was given more of a stress test against Jan-Lennard Struff in the third round. Struff hasn't always been the easiest opponent for Alcaraz, and you can see how close the scoreline always is when these two face off. Struff has that ability to redline his game when playing Carlos because he knows that might be the only path to victory. So with that said, you often see him going for big second serves, coming forward to the net a lot, and taking huge cuts at the ball on the return. This, though, comes with a lot of trade-offs. Double faults, getting past at the net, and more errors overall. However, the upside is that it leaves Struff with a chance to disrupt Alcaraz's rhythm, and we saw it pay off to some extent again. After Alcaraz breezed through the first set, Struff decided to force the action. Alcaraz reclaimed the lead with some clinical tennis in the third, but Struff had his chances in the fourth with a breakpoint opportunity. But he fell short after a tentative net approach and error in judgment led to this moment. Alcaraz went on to break Struff and served out the match to extend his winning streak to 21. But in spite of Alcaraz's dominance, Kyrgios believes Sinner is the one who's going to have the better career.
Who do you think's going to have a better career, Alcaraz or Sinner? I'll tell you mine first. I'll say Sinner because Alcaraz loves girls. He might get distracted, he might party too much.
Should we even be doing this? Entering into Wimbledon, two of the biggest questions for Sinner were about the reasons behind his split with fitness trainer Marco Panici and his physiotherapist Ulisses Badio, of course in addition to his mental recovery following his disappointing loss to Alcaraz at the French Open final. However, it was Jannik who had the much easier run during week 1 at Wimbledon. He lost only 17 games the entire week, which so happens to be the fewest number of games ever conceded to reach the Wimbledon men's singles round of 16 in the Open era. None of Sinner's matches surpassed the 2-hour mark. He was ruthless against Nardi in the first round, and despite not getting a lot of his first serves in, Sinner gave away little from the baseline, and Nardi didn't get any breakpoint opportunities. The second round against Vukic played out in similar fashion. Again, his serve wasn't exactly at its lethal best, but Sinner's ball striking was as good as we've seen it.
Such a beautiful point.
Watching the match, you could see an obvious difference in quality from the baseline in terms of firepower and consistency. Vukic just couldn't hang in with Sinner. The Aussie, however, left it all out on the court and tried to break Sinner in the third set when the world number 1 was serving for the match. Sinner let 5 match points slip on serve at 5-3, but saved his 4th break point with this ridiculous forehand pass on the stretch. He then fired consecutive aces to close out the match in style. The third round clash against Pedro Martinez looked like a mismatch once again. Now, I have to say, Martinez hurt his shoulder coming into the match. Now, I've got to say, players who are 100% fit get destroyed by Sinner. Being semi-fit against Jannik, though, is like being an injured zebra trying to get away from a lion. Martinez tried to get away, but we ended up seeing some netted volleys, missed first serves on crucial points, and a lack of depth on offense. Not even a single ace from Martinez all match. It just tells you how underpowered he was, with an average first serve speed of just 98 miles per hour. A calm Sinner picked apart Martinez, and the match was over in a hurry.
Well, Yannick Sinner wins, he hasn't lost.
But can we talk about Sinner's movement for a second? Seeing him slide into powerful forehands and backhands on grass is pure filth. Despite being 6'4", he manages to maintain a wide base and good balance when hitting those shots. Seeing how Sinner and Alcaraz move on the surface tells you how much of a factor sliding on grass is going to be for the next generation of players too. Sinner didn't open the lid on why he parted ways with Panici and Badio days before the tournament. The word on the street is that one of them gave a public interview that didn't sit too well with Yannick. There might be more to it, but what happened to Draper at SW19? Despite losing to Lehechka in the semis at Queens, many had Draper as one of the favorites for the title. Plus, there was the added pressure of being the British #1, playing in front of the home crowd and filling the huge shoes of Andy Murray. Draper breezed through Sebastian Baez, who retired in the third set, and while most of us were aware of the threat from Marin Cilic, the steady improvements from Draper over the years made it seem impossible for that to happen. Cilic won the Nottingham Challenger on grass in mid-June, and it generated a little ripple of interest as he'd been playing his way back into form after a few difficult years. A former world #3, Wimbledon finalist, and a player with some serious grass court credentials versus a young Draper contesting in only his 7th match at SW19. Draper found himself in unfamiliar territory and was bullied from the baseline by a more experienced Cilic. Cilic was also using the slice serve out wide to the Draper backhand to set up powerful forehand finishes again and again. And then there was also the aggressive returning, where Cilic pounced on attackable serves. Cilic continued to deliver a series of brutal knockout punches, and before we knew it, Draper was down 2-0. Needing the home crowd's support more than ever, Draper halved the deficit in the third set, cleaning up the errors in his game and forcing Cilic to move more and playing with more width. Then came the fourth set, where Cilic dove deep into his reserves and rolled back the years to fend off any thoughts of a comeback from the home favorite. Cilic put 53 winners past Draper to earn his first top 5 win on grass in his 10th attempt. We know Cilic to have blown leads at Wimbledon in the past. He served for the match against Haas in 2009, was up 2-1 against Djokovic in 2014, and had 2-0 and 3 match points versus Federer in 2016. He lost again after being up 2-0 against Pella in 2018, and also against Medvedev in 2021. Didn't happen this time though. 99% of people would have called it quits, having gone through the injury, surgery, recovery cycle that Cilic has been through, which is why he's totally deserving of the win. But back to Draper. Were there nerve management issues, or was it just a lack of experience playing against a seasoned champion? Draper says that it wasn't the pressure.
You know, like, it's not the pressure, it's not the whatever, I just didn't play good enough today. You know, I lost to a better player.
With the 4th seed out, Cam Norrie naturally became Britain's best hope for winning big. Norrie sneaked into the second week without making much noise. Hate his technique for all you want, but this man knows how to take down seeds for sure. The win against Tiafoe in the second round was particularly impressive to me. Norrie was having easy holds while Tiafoe struggled to buy a first serve. It's been a common theme for Big Foe. When you compare his percentage of first serves in among the top 50, Tiafoe's 57.3% of first serves in sits at number 47, only ahead of Arnaldi, Caboli, and De Minaur. Meanwhile, Norrie hit 17 aces against Tiafoe, who's now 0-4 against British players on grass. On off days, you'll usually see Tiafoe struggle to make first serves, and this always gets punished on grass, where the serve brings a lot more of an offensive boost. It's one thing to not be able to put a first serve in, but it's another thing entirely and super interesting when a player isn't able to simply put a return in play. Holger Rune was sent packing in the first round after blowing a 2-0 lead. The frustration from Rune was palpable, especially seeing that he hurt his knee midway through the match. He admitted that the injury compromised his serve and his backhand. And while that is true and Rune's durability long-term is something to talk about, the bigger question for now should be why Rune continues to adopt a return strategy that clearly isn't working. This is a graph from Matthew Willis on X showing the return strategy and performance compass of the ATP top 20 players. The top right corner shows a high margin, high payoff approach from players. This is where you want to be. This is the Alcaraz-Novak Sinner territory, elite ball strikers and great movers. But you'll also find great players like Draper, Paul, and Medvedev who return hard into big targets. The bottom right quadrant represents players who have high margins but low payoffs on the return. Players in this category put plenty of returns in play but don't do enough to neutralize the advantage from the server, so they end up not winning most points. The top left corner is for those with low margins and high payoffs. They naturally hug the baseline and are aggressive on the return. As a result, they don't get the most returns in, but when they do, they're more likely to win the point. You'll see players like Rublev, Humbert, Tiafoe, and Arthur Fils here. But then we have the bottom left corner, which just so happens to be the worst of the worst. Players here have a low margin, low payoff return strategy. You'll find Holger in this quadrant, and it's been a major issue. He tries to take returns super early and hit right through the ball every single time. He doesn't always have the patience to work his way into points, which is why he sometimes struggles against big servers like Jarry. Which is easier to do? Hitting or redirecting a ball coming at you at 145 miles per hour, or simply blocking the ball to give yourself a chance in the rally? This is something that Taylor Fritz does super well and that we're going to talk about a little later on in the video. And instead of maybe looking at what could have been done differently, Rune had this to say.
I mean, if I play normal, I'm beating him 9 out of 10 times, with all respect for Nicolas Jarry.
But props to Jarry for coming through qualies, beating Rune in the first round, and taking down Fonseca in the third. The Chilean has been through a lot. He fell off a cliff last year, winning only 3 ATP matches after his finals appearance in Rome. Jarry suffered from vestibular neuritis, a medical condition that affects a nerve responsible for balance. He struggled with dizziness, lack of balance, and coordination, but has slowly made progress and returned to form. He was fearless against Fonseca, particularly in the fourth set, where he held from love 40 down at 4-all and again in the tiebreak. The Brazilian didn't have any answers to Jarry's serving in the first 2 sets and really struggled with returns on the ad side, and when he managed to fight back, it was just a little too late. Still, there's a lot to be proud of for Fonseca. The win against Fernley was as smooth as you like. He became the youngest man to reach Wimbledon round 3 since 2011, and that's something to savor. Keeping the expectations real with Joao though, I wouldn't call a third round exit disappointing. But what is disappointing is seeing an entire generation fade away ever so slightly. 4 years ago, Tsitsipas said that Medvedev, Zverev, and he could become the new big 3. But fast forward to today, and all 3 men were sent packing in the opening round. Tsitsipas retired against Valentin Royer as the injury in his lower back flared up again. Tsitsipas looked lost after the match and said that he no longer knew what he needed to do to stay healthy, and that if things continued this way, there would be no point in competing.
I'm battling many wars these days. It's really painful to see myself in a situation like this.
Despite seeing those comments, what really grabbed the headlines was what his coach Goran Ivanisevic had to say about him. Goran said that he's never seen a more unprepared player in his life than Steph, and that Tsitsipas wasn't doing anything on his part to make progress. Now, why would Goran make such comments? On the one hand, you could say that he was showing some tough love and maybe even trying to publicly ignite a fire under Tsitsipas. On the other hand, and this is maybe more what I believe, is that Goran was just a coach who's put in so much time and effort and just simply isn't seeing the results. We've seen members of Tsitsipas' team make similar complaints in the past that Steph isn't putting in enough effort or not showing enough progress despite having all the resources around him to succeed. Like Tsitsipas, Medvedev is also 1-3 at Grand Slams on the season. Daniil has lost 3 straight Grand Slam maiden draw matches for the first time in his career, and after losing to Bonzi in 4 sets, Medvedev had this to say.
I felt him playing very well. I felt like I didn't play too bad. So yeah, I don't see much I could do better.
For someone who made back-to-back semis at Wimbledon, the loss came as a surprise, and it's beginning to look like opponents get inspired when playing Medvedev. You'll hear Daniil saying things like, the opponent played out of their skin and there wasn't much to do. It's comments like these that leave me wondering if Medvedev is lacking perspective on what's missing from his game. Medvedev was more aggressive in Halle, but not so much against Bonzi. Double figures in double faults, mixed results at the net, and a lack of killer instincts under pressure, especially in the tiebreak, summed up the loss. Meanwhile, Zverev said his problem wasn't necessarily tennis.
I've never felt this empty before. just lacking joy.
After his loss to Rinderknecht, Zverev did some reflecting and opened up about his mental struggles since the Australian Open. Looking at the match itself, though, it was a back-and-forth affair. Both players were locked at 1-set-all when play was suspended due to the 11 p.m. Wimbledon curfew, which we're gonna talk about later in the video. Rinderknecht raced out of the blocks, though, when play resumed on Tuesday, taking the third set before squandering a 5-3 lead in the fourth set tiebreak. The Frenchman, to his credit, eventually got the job done in the decider. But the big takeaway was seeing Zverev playing with zero risk and zero initiative once again in the biggest moments. Offense gets rewarded on grass, but Zverev's safe approach made it difficult for him to shake off Rinderknecht. On his part, Rinderknecht mixed things up nicely, attacked the net, and also knew when to sit back and defend. Zverev, on the other hand, was 19 for 38 at the net and couldn't convert any of the 9 breakpoint opportunities he created. Speaking of opportunities, you can always count on Big Ben to come up with the goods when it matters most. Shelton was made for the big stage, and once again, he's proven that he can consistently make it to the second week at slams. He breezed through the first week without dropping a single set, but it wasn't always straightforward. A controversial decision to suspend play in Shelton's match against Hijikata left many fans talking because Shelton needed only a minute to complete the match the following day.
Ladies and gentlemen, play suspended.
Oh my goodness.
Due to darkness.
This is unbelievable. Ben Shelton is understandably upset here. I mean, he's got a chance to serve it out.
Wimbledon is chock full of traditions, and while the curfew may seem obsolete given today's technology, it's one of the things that adds to the character and lore of the slam. Speaking of Wimbledon traditions, I recently had the chance to go to SW19 myself and tell some really cool stories from around the grounds. It's all coming to you right here on the channel, and I can't wait to share it all with you. Elsewhere, Taylor Fritz made a living taking down big 6'8" servers with gritty 5-set wins over Mpechi Perricard and Gabriel Diallo. Fritz successfully utilized the block return on the baseline to take pace off the ball without giving the opponent too much time and advantage on the +1, and it was pretty interesting to watch. Rublev made it into the second week before running into Alcaraz, while the Demon made it back-to-back round 16s. Both players talked about dealing with burnout and how they managed to deal with the mental stress. But when we checked in on some of the Italians, it was a different story. Berrettini did everything possible to be fit for Wimbledon, only to end up with an upset loss in the first round. He expressed his frustrations and aired some thoughts about his future. Like Berrettini, Tommy Paul and Lorenzo Musetti also withdrew from Queens in order to fully recover from their injuries, but it wasn't enough to prevent an early exit for any of the guys. And then there was Bublik, who could either make a deep run or crash out in round 1. The latter happened in this case. For a player who beat Jannik in Halle just a week earlier and managed to get seeded for Wimbledon, it was an upset that didn't really feel like an upset, seeing that Bublik's grass court success has always been skewed to Halle. Meanwhile, Menchik's campaign ended in a whimper with a huge win for Flavio Cobolli in round 3. Withdrawals from Hurkacz, Casper Ruud, Arthur Fils, and Sebastian Korda also made the headlines at the start of the tournament. The losses, upsets, and withdrawals from week 1 call into question the difficulty of transitioning from clay to grass. Most players continue to struggle with this. There are no off days, and there's hardly any time to reset. On top of that, you need to completely switch up your game, use slice serves more than the kicker, add the backhand slice, take balls earlier, flatten your ground strokes, and generally play more attacking tennis. Most of the tour still struggles to adapt, and it's about time that they all took lessons from the guy who dominates on clay, goes to party in Ibiza, and then comes back to dominate on grass. Seeing the physical struggles on tour, we've seen the idea floated around of making the men's matches best of 3 during the first week, and on the other hand, we've seen the argument that the women should be playing best of 5 from an equality standpoint. Pegula says she'd rather the men played best of 3, and these are her reasons.
I think I would rather the men play 2 out of 3. I don't think we all need to start playing 3 out of 5. It's too, to me, it's just too long, and I personally lose interest watching the matches. I think they're incredible matches and incredible physically and mentally, but I'm just like, do we really need that? Like, I don't know.
I think there's a certain prestige that comes from the best of 5 format at slams. It's the ultimate challenge. Plus, it's given us iconic moments. Think Isner-Mahut, Federer-Djokovic, and even what we saw at Roland Garros between Alcaraz and Sinner just a few weeks ago. On the other hand, making the women play best of 5, I think that just opens up the door for a lot more strain on their bodies and also unnecessary injuries. But what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Last year's finalist Jasmine Paolini fell in the second round to world number 80 Kamala Rakimova. Paolini looked to be in control after taking the first set 6-4 and creating 4 breakpoint opportunities at 1-love in the second set. However, Rakimova saved all 4 breakpoints and turned the match on its head to pull off an incredible upset. Meanwhile, Zheng Qinwen lost to Siniakova in the first round. This one wasn't exactly an upset to me because Zheng was down 0-2 to Siniakova on grass in the head-to-head and had also not won a match at Wimbledon since 2022. Why is her game not suited for the surface? It's most likely due to the fact that she takes time to set up her shots, and the grass is very unforgiving when it comes to that extra time needed. But perhaps the biggest upset of the week was seeing Coco Gauff sniped by Diana Yastremska in the opening round. Gauff won the French Open, went on a press tour, and then played only 1 match on grass coming into SW19. Did it seem to you like she was underprepared? Gauff hit slow, attackable serves, which the ultra-aggressive returning Yastremska pounced on with hard returns down the middle to draw out a weak second ball from Coco. Yastremska was also rushing Coco's forehand, which is a usual go-to strategy for many players, and while Gauff managed to keep it close in the first set, the second set was total domination from Yastremska. A flat performance from Coco. Only 45% of first serves in, 9 double faults, 29 unforced errors, and only 6 winners. On a surface where attacking gets rewarded more than defense, Gauff would need to make some changes to her game to find more success on the surface. The lessons have been learned though.
I definitely learned a lot of what I would and would not do again.
But what were the odds that a 37-year-old woman ranked outside the top 100 was going to beat one of the favorites for the title? Keys had already lost to Tatiana Maria last month in Queens. 3 days later, she lost to Vondrushova in the opening round in Berlin. Still, I had pretty high hopes for Maddie coming into Wimbledon. I thought she had more than enough firepower to blow anyone off the court, but that didn't quite happen. Now, her second serve went completely MIA against Siegmund in the third round. She only won 1 out of 19 second serve points, and that single point didn't come until she was literally serving to stay in the match. Keys also struggled to finish at the net, going 10 for 26. Siegmund won the match by forcing Keys to make vertical movements using drop shots and low slices. She did this knowing Keys didn't have the touch or movement required to nullify those threats. This time, variety trumped firepower, a straight sets W for Lara. But Keys wasn't the only seed to take a fall. JPEG was sent packing earlier in the week. She had just beaten Iga to the title in Bad Homburg days prior to her first-round clash with Elisabetta Cocciaretto. Again, how did a player go from beating Iga and winning the Elephant Trophy to losing in straight sets to a player outside the top 100? I don't know if you all have noticed this, but I've been picking up on a trend lately where a player will win a tournament leading into a slam and then proceed to crash out in the early rounds. Of course, there are exceptions to this, mainly if your name is Sinner or Alcaraz, but what really is the impact on performance of winning a tournament before going into a slam? On the one hand, it seems like you'd be brimming with confidence, but also the physical toll that tennis takes on your body just might be too much to overcome for most to then make a deep run the following week at a slam. To be fair, Cocciaretto played fearless tennis, serving big and going for her shots, but when you look at Pegula's losses in the last 6 slams, it says something about her chances of winning a major. For Naomi, she fell short again in the third round, and her response after the match was revealing of where she is mentally.
I'm just gonna be a negative human being today. I'm so sorry. I have nothing positive to say about myself.
Losing to Pavlyuchenkova is nothing to be ashamed of. She is one of the most beautiful strokes on tour, has made the quarterfinals or better at every slam, and is always a dangerous player for anyone to face. But for Naomi, it's been about 18 months since her comeback, and she still isn't where she wants to be in terms of being seeded at majors. Is it time to hit the panic button? Shifting focus to Emma Navarro, she had a brilliant first week, flying pretty under the radar as well. From taking down 2-time Wimbledon champ Petra Kvitova, who's retiring after the US Open in the first round, to ousting the defending champion Krejcikova in the third round. Emma played 3 grass tournaments in the build-up to Wimbledon, literally playing her way into form. In the meantime, Iga Swiatek only dropped 1 set all week, and now she's on course to equaling her best ever result at Wimbledon. Do you guys think she can go a step further? Revenge is still on the menu for Sabalenka. The back-to-back Grand Slam final losses have only fired her up more, and she's still the clear favorite for the title at this point. Sabalenka is the only top 5 seed still standing, and boy did she have to do it the hard way with gritty wins over Bouzkova, Emma Raducanu, and Elise Mertens in the 4th round. Speaking of Raducanu, it's hard not to be impressed with her level these days. The match against Sabalenka in the 3rd round gave us the full WTA experience. Tense moments, strategic plays, and wild swings in momentum under the lights. Sabalenka maintained a sense of calm under pressure despite blowing 7 set points earlier in the first set. Facing a set point herself, Sabalenka did this before stealing the set.
Are you kidding me?
Sabalenka's raw power and sheer force of will reminded us why she's still the best. Aryna found herself down 1-4 and facing a breakpoint at 30-40 in the 2nd set, but just refused to give up. Emma had a good chance to make it 5-1, but pushed a forehand long. Emma's missed opportunity created the spark for a Sabalenka comeback, and from then on, it was one-way traffic. Opportunities not taken against Sabalenka always end up being costly, but Emma can certainly build on this going forward with Mark Petchey in her corner as she looks to find that killer instinct. On the women's side, it seems like Sabalenka is locked in and she appears to be on a mission. She's my pick for the title. And on the men's side, Djokovic may be seeded number 6, but he's playing like a number 3. The only question from here is whether he can make it through both Sinner and Alcaraz on the way to the title. Guys, if you loved this video, be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts on the action that went down at week 1 of Wimbledon. I can't wait to share more content with you over the next few weeks from my time at SW19, and until next time, keep going for the lines.